Today is my honor to interview Samuel P. Comley III, born August 24th, 1936, Savannah, Georgia. Served in the United States Navy, attaining the rank of commander. I'm the interviewer, Jim Jeffries, Daphne, Alabama. Today is June 28th, 2011. Sam, share with us your early days, your childhood, and your family growing up.
Well, saying that I was born in Savannah, my mother was from an old Southern family, and so my father was in the Navy, and they were stationed, I don't know whether it was Annapolis or at Alexandria, Washington, but for me to be born in Savannah, they drove down, and I had to be born in Savannah. I couldn't be born.
That's interesting.
So that's how it all started, and most of my early days were in Savannah, and we lived at a place called Isle of Hope, and it was sort of a Huckleberry Finn type existence, which I enjoyed thoroughly. And my grandfather had a large home down there, and my father was overseas during the war, and this is the time I mostly remember. And it was just great. We had rowboats, and we'd row all over the tributary of the Savannah River, and it was just a lot of fun down there. I had a couple of uncles around there, and they'd kid around with me too, so they were sort of substitutes for father being overseas. After that, unfortunately, my parents were divorced, so we moved to Mobile, and my mother had a support group, had a sister here, and so we stayed with her for a while, and then we moved out to another house, and that was about 6th grade then. And of course, because the educational system here is a little different, or in those days it was 11 years of school instead of 12 like they have now. They put me back a grade, and then I had to go summer school to catch up, and ultimately I ended up not going to the 7th or 8th grade, and so I graduated from school a little early, but a little bit of trauma since the girls are all bigger than me and all that sort of stuff, you know how that works. So I graduated from Murphy. Before I did that, I had the routine, I had the paper route, and I made some money there, and which was great. And I served a very poor district, so I pedaled quite fast through that. Not only poor, but it's sort of tough. And then you get promoted, and you have another route, and that was a tough area too. And then I finally got a nice area, and after that, I quit. But I made some money, and compared to the other boys, I was doing quite well. So anyway, that was the end of Murphy High School. I went to Spring Hill and studied pre-engineering there. And it was also in preparation to make me a little stronger for getting to Annapolis, because my mother had that in the back of her mind. And part of it was because we didn't have a lot of money, and the other part was my father being in the Navy. And several of my relatives were in the Navy. I had 2 uncles that were in the Army. One uncle was in the Navy, and he served in the North Atlantic. And had one uncle that was captured in the Philippines, and he survived the Bataan Death March and went over to Japan, and he was in a concentration camp for a while. So I've had quite a few relatives in the military. So I got through Spring Hill all right. I enjoyed it. It was a Jesuit school, and I liked the fathers were really great. Father Isley and Smith, Anderson. I remember Dr. Curley. I remember a lot of them, even this far away, and very inspirational. So I got a little foundation for going to the Naval Academy, and my mother sent me down to the Federal Building. I took some kind of exam. And it was a presidential appointment, which means I guess your father was in the military or went to Annapolis or something, so you could take this exam, and if you survive that, you're entered. So I got in that way. At Annapolis, I was pretty good in sports, but I had to plug away to get through the academics. So it was pretty tough, plebe year particularly, because they did hazing in those years, and it slacked off. They've got a little more common sense approach to it nowadays, but in those days you were looking up a lot of questions and doing a lot of push-ups and a lot of things like that. But we all got through it. Most of us did. Not everybody did, actually. Graduated from there in '58. My first ship was a destroyer. It was a Sutherland. And they sort of drew your name out of a hat. And if you're a certain priority, you request a certain ship. So if you were 500, you're the 500th pick of it. So, but I did get a good ship, and I went to that for, was on there almost 2 years. We had 2 deployments to Westpac, which meant going to Japan and Hong Kong, Taiwan. And it was an older ship, but it was a good ship. And I remember going down in the boiler room, and I saw like it was not in such a good condition, but they plugged it up, and we were bouncing all over the place. And we did this Taiwan patrol, and I did this with the next ship I was on too, and we were about 15 miles off of China, and so we'd go up and down so many miles, and as if we were going to stop the hordes of China from coming over or something like that. At least we'd let somebody know, I guess. And there are a lot of junks and a lot of things like that there. But that we did the Taiwan patrol, and we'd go into Kaohsiung, Taiwan, for liberty.
Were there ever any incidents with the Chinese?
No. We tried to listen to them. We weren't really that sophisticated, but we tried to listen to them with our electronic gear, and we'd hear some radars, and we recorded on a tape recorder. But if our military was going to depend on our intelligence, they're going to lose the war, because it was austere, to say the least. But no, we didn't have any. I do remember that around that time frame that the Chinese were flying some planes over Taiwan, and the Taiwanese we gave them the Sidewinder missile, which was infrared, homed on infrared, and the Taiwanese did real well with that. So I guess that calmed the Chinese down a little bit. But it wasn't because we were on the patrol there. We were just sort of a tripwire, I guess. So after that, I went to new construction. I guess I had a pretty good fitness report, because usually if you go to new construction, you did okay. So, and then I was in operations and combat information, and we commissioned that ship down in Avondale, and brought that around to Charleston, fitted it out, went back through the canal, the Panama Canal, and then to San Diego, our home port. And then we made some deployments with that to Westpac, and pretty much the same routine, Japan and Taiwan and Hong Kong. And that was good. That was a small destroyer, a destroyer escort, and great captain. Always had good captains. Maybe one wasn't so hot, but of all the ones I had, they were great.
Makes a big difference.
And this fella, he's the one. If you want to go to war, this is the one you want to run the ship. I know the second captain that came aboard that destroyer. I remember this. We were doing that Taiwan patrol routine, and he just stopped the ship and he said, "Okay, well, we're going to have a swim call now." I said, "Here we are." I'm thinking to myself, here we are, 15 miles off the China coast. We're going to have a swim call, and so stops the ship, puts the boats over to protect with their M1 gunner's mates to protect the people from sharks and such. And so we had a swim call. I said, "Okay, he's the captain." But I just made sure I didn't go swimming. So that was one of the events with that ship. After that, well, I got to get to Vietnam sometime, because that's the purpose of this. But I did. I went to teach in ROTC at the University of Louisville, and I was trying to decide whether I was going to stay in the Navy or not. And after I looked around and sort of compared the civilian versus the military, and there's a lot of activity in the military, as you well know, and I enjoyed that. So I taught operations and navigation there. That was fun. 2 years. Met my fiance there. Then I volunteered from Vietnam there. I said, well, I don't think it was patriotism. I think it was just sort of an adventure. So I was in my 20s, and
Sure.
maybe a little bit of patriotism, but it seemed to be the thing to do. So I volunteered for that. First thing we went to is survival school. I was about 5 days, 3 days, a little foggy on that, but they took us to the California desert. And so they put us out there and said, oh, you're going to survive, and you're supposed to catch some rabbits or something like that. And well, they ended up giving us some rabbits. Those things out of the pet store, you know. Said, I'm not going to kill that rabbit. I used to raise rabbits and hamsters. I'm not killing that rabbit. And so we had a hunter with us, and I think he killed one rabbit, threw in a great big barrel of water, and that's what we had. Then another aviator, he had a friend in the air, dropped us some lifesavers. So about 3 days, had 2 lifesavers. But you can get by. All those people on diets, you can stop eating, believe me. And so then they captured us. They had some Navy guys that were supposed to be bad, and they'd capture us and they'd put us in the boxes and twist us all around and make us talk and sort of simulate being in captivity. The box wasn't so hot because I just can't bend that well, but sort of force you in a little back. But I survived. So after that, off to Vietnam and went to San Francisco, flew out of there, flew to the Philippines, and they gave me somebody came on board and said, we want you to take this top secret stuff to Saigon. So I said, my lucky day, I get to watch this. So I kept that on the plane, and so we landed in Tan Son Nhut Airport, and the fellow that came up to me, and of all things, he's an Asian American. And I said, I got to give this top secret stuff that guy that doesn't look like a white Anglo-Saxon American. I said, so I worried about that, and then we cleared that up. He took the stuff away, and then I got onto a bus with the rest of the guys as well, and it's all wired in the windows and bars and all this stuff, so the bad guys could throw hand grenades in there. And I said, I started wondering whether this is the place I wanted to be after all. So they took us.
That's part of the adventure.
That's part of the adventure. Yeah. But so they took me downtown, and I checked in, and I was an advisor. I was advisor to the Vietnamese. I wasn't working directly. I worked with the Vietnamese, not with the Americans. So I went and checked in. They gave me a job, and I had a hotel room in Saigon, but I'd go out on patrol with the Vietnamese. And the fellow that checked in before me, about 6 months later, he got killed. So I guess I was fortunate in a way that I checked in after him rather than with him, because I would have had his job and perhaps been shot or something. Who knows? But he was a great guy, and lost several friends, really. For the number of people there in the early, this was 64, 65, for the number of people there, quite a few of them got killed. And really bright ones. This guy was on the ball and had a couple of kids. Another one was a Dartmouth graduate, and he was single. But I know somebody said his mother was so proud of him because he had a scholarship through Dartmouth. And another fellow that I was in his wedding, and the sad thing about him was they just had a baby, this in Seattle, Washington, and then she got pregnant again. So when he was killed, he left 2 infants and a wife. So it was just staggering. And then some Vietnamese were killed too. So that's all pretty. That's a sad part of it. But there are a lot of comical things over there too, and I remember those mostly. So,
what was it like working with the Vietnamese?
I enjoyed it because it's their way of life is a little bit different. Sometimes they're more pragmatic. I enjoyed it. I know there's a lot of talk about the Vietnamese weren't good fighters and they didn't want to fight and all this stuff, but I didn't notice that here. But some of them had been there so long, the wars had been going on, they were, like many of our soldiers and sailors, they were pulled out of civilian life. One captain that I advised, there were 7 ships, and I went on these ships, and I was with the captains. And this one captain, he'd been a lawyer, and he wanted to get out and go do lawyer things. And I suspect at least half the captains wanted to be doing something else. But that wasn't the case, and but they were great. I liked it, and learned a lot, learned a little Vietnamese, and still have some. I mean, I have a Vietnamese friend here too in Mobile that I run around with a little bit. So I'd go out on these patrols, and with one of 7 Vietnamese ships, and I'd sort of pick one. Then I'd go out and meet the ship, and we'd ride up and down the Mekong Delta. There are 4 rivers in the Mekong Delta primarily, and then of course there's one that goes all the way up to Cambodia, the Mekong. So we'd ride up and down those. All right, first I'd pick a ship, I'd go meet it, and then we'd ride up and down, we'd patrol, and we'd stop the junks, and we'd search them, see if we can find any contraband and that sort of thing. Sometimes we had troops, we'd drop them off, and we'd provide a little fire support if they needed it. We got fired at a little bit, just sniper fire, but I was never any all-out battle or anything like that. It was just sort of snipers just shooting every once in a while. And you could hear it hit against the ship, but it didn't seem to be a big deal. Of course, I was in my 20s. Nothing was a big deal.
Nothing's a big deal.
My first one I went out on, in those days you could go to Tan Son Nhut Airport and just say, find a helicopter and say, are you going to Vung Tau? I need a ride there, or something like that. Or Canto, or one of the places. And you just got on the helicopter and took off. Later on they started, filling out paper and all that stuff. But I went to Vung Tau, the first one, and I met a junk. They were going to take me somewhere where I could rendezvous with the ship. And so I got on this junk, and here was 2 guys in black shorts, like BVDs, but black. And they didn't speak English, I didn't speak Vietnamese, and they had their instructions to take me to a junk base. And so they took me there, but I was always wondering, if they had a security clearance or anything like that.
Sure.
So they could have just taken me somewhere else and sold me off. But I made it there too. So I got to this junk base, and junk bases, there are several of them up and down the coast of South Vietnam, and they were to stop infiltration of weapons from the north. And so that was their main, and they were paramilitary. So I got off at this junk base, and they were having trouble with a refrigerator, and they couldn't get it started or something, one of these refrigerators that didn't need electricity. So I could read the English directions, so I fixed that for them. They were really happy. That changed their whole life. They had a refrigerator that worked, and well, then my ship came, and I motored out, got on the ship, and I really don't know where the ship went, but I'm sure we went up and down the Mekong Delta and searched junks and that sort of thing. There's one occasion I was on an LCM, a little larger than the ship I'm normally on, and we had some, we're trying to pick up a aircraft. It was downed, and we wanted to get in there and get the aircraft and put it on the ship, but we couldn't do it, and we were being shot at a little bit. And so I called in this is the first time I ever called in an airstrike, so I called in a AD, a Sky Raider, and they're really the workhorse in those days, the workhorse of the Air Force. So they bombed around there, and we pulled out. I don't know whatever happened to the aircraft that crashed, or the person in it actually. Left that one to the Vietnamese Army or the American Army to take care of that. So we pulled out of that. On one occasion, we went up to Tan Chau, which is on the Cambodian border, and what was interesting about that was that when I looked across, we looked across the Cambodian border on the Mekong River, there was another LSIL, that was the type of ship I was on. And my understanding was that there was a French officer on the LSIL across the border with a Cambodian crew. I said, this is really a hell of a situation. We have an American advisor on a Vietnamese LSIL on this side, over there's a French officer on a Cambodian ship on the other side. Just wonder where all these ships come from after
Sure.
the war. I guess they just shotgun them, leave them where they are. But that was interesting to me that the Cambodians had the same kind of ship as we did.
Yeah.
But the Vietnamese weren't at war on, but there's always a little some borderline skirmishes. They weren't the best of friends anyway. Anyway, I got out of that and came back.
You mentioned that you recall a lot of funny things that from your experience there.
One time we had a cow on board the ship. Not too many. When you live I lived in sick bay, and they had two cots. One was for the sick people, and then one was for me. And actually, fortunately, I did get a little sick one time, so I was already in sick bay, so I didn't have to go very far. But we had this cow on board, and I was sort of wondering were we transporting this cow somewhere? And so all of a sudden, one day, we pulled up to the pier in Kanto, I think it was. Anyway, all this is in the Mekong Delta. And we went, and it was Tet, the Chinese or Asian New Year's. And we had a great big feast, and that's where the cow was. But also they had, back in after men's room, after head, you have chickens and ducks running around, which it didn't bother me at all because, the food was fresh. But,
Sure.
Sure, no problem there. Bob Hope came there. I did see him. He came to Vinh Long, which was really sort of a rough, tough area, and that's the Cochin River. And so we saw Bob Hope, and I had this Vietnamese with me, so it was hard getting him through the gate to see Bob Hope, and they had helicopters flying over so you couldn't hear him so well, and Bob Hope looked tired, but Jill St. John was there, and she was really nice, even with the makeup being, the sun was hot and the makeup was dribbling down.
Sure.
And Anita Bryant, I think, was there, and Miss somebody, one of the Texas, not Alabama, but one of the beauty queens. So that was nice. So left there, did some more patrolling. Trying to think what else might be of interest. Went to a place called Phu Quoc, and that's an island to the west of Vietnam. And this is what's known, they make a Phu Quoc nuc mam, which is a sauce that you put on your rice. And it's very famous. If you see a Vietnamese, say, go to Vietnamese restaurants, say, I'd like some Phu Quoc nuc mam. And they may even have some. That's special. And went there for a while. I remember we needed to go to the bathroom, a couple of us. So in the center of town, there's this great big wall. And what you do, you urinate against the wall. And, people are carrying on business, right? Walking by, girls, guys, it just doesn't matter. So that was different. When you got to go, I guess. So we left Phu Quoc, and we went to another island called Con Son, and that was a prisoner island, political prisoners. And so that was interesting. And both these islands are out in the ocean. But we didn't make too many trips out in the ocean. We usually spent our time just going up and down the rivers of the Mekong. One time we'd anchored or either pulled into port or something, and got in a boat and went up a canal to this Vietnamese village. So we walked in there, the Vietnamese captain and myself, and there was, it's like the old movies where you have this medicine man and he's trying to hawk some alcohol or medicine or whatever it is. So this guy's out there beating his chest like this and doing all this talking. Very big circle around him. So I walked over there to see what was going on. All of a sudden, the big circle gets around me because they hadn't seen an American.
Oh.
I said, "Oh, let me get out of here again." So I got with the captain and we got out of there. Let's see what else on there. Oh, I'd go back to Saigon occasionally and get the laundry done and all that and sleep, have a couple of meals. I ate the Vietnamese food. I liked it. I was a 4 bowler. I could eat 4 bowls of rice. That's
A 4 bowler.
yeah, that's it. I could, and I like the fish and the meat and the sauce. But occasionally I'd go back to Saigon and get change of clothes and such. And they had a program going on. I think we started it. One of the Navy advisors did anyway. And we'd get in these aircraft and we'd go spot artillery fire for the Vietnamese Navy. So we'd get in the little L-19 it was, and it's nighttime too. I'm not sure why I was doing all this. But anyway, we went over and we'd spot artillery, and they'd fire, we'd say right 100, drop 100 and all that stuff. And it was into what's called a free fire zone. In other words, anybody could fire or drop bombs in this because it's all Viet Cong, and anybody's free game in that certain area. So I did that a couple of times, and I'd already figured out the ratio if we got shot, whether we would coast into safe land or into bad land. So and one time I had a Vietnamese with me too, so he could talk the language to the ship. So here we had an American flyer on the L-19, the pilot, myself, and the Vietnamese. So he sat in my lap because it was small. It was only a 2-seater. And I asked him, I said, well, if this plane goes down, what are you going to do? He says, well, I can just take off all my clothes. I have these black BVDs on, and I can just mingle into the crowd.
Oh, sure.
I said, well, what about me? I don't think I can do that one. So I did a little bit of that. So I guess that takes care of Vietnam. All in all, I was an advisor to 7 ships, and it was quite interesting. I've probably forgotten some things, but.
Well, you said earlier that you signed on for an adventure. It certainly sounds like you had one.
It was. It's something that I remember. I think about, and think about how some of the children that I saw were real destitute. You see our kids run around on skateboards and such, but in some of the places there, they have skateboards, but the kids have polio, so they have to use the skateboards to move around. And you see that in some countries. It's really sad. Cliff palates, hair lips, what we used to call when we were kids. See that common too.
Right.
So everybody, I guess they need a little help there. So anyway, after Vietnam, I didn't have my orders till the very end. So the head of the Navy advisory team, he was really giving Bupers, the people that write the orders, hell. And he said, I've been out here for so long, and you guys are sitting on your butts, and you can't get the orders out to him. So he fussed at him. I got my orders to go to Seattle and put another ship in commission as a guided missile ship. And I was the operations officer on there. So we put that in commission, and that was fun, living in Seattle. After that, they figured I need some polish, so they sent me to the War College, Naval War College. And so I got my master's while I was up there, and that's in Newport, Rhode Island. That's real nice. And we were in Navy housing. At that time, it was sort of a dump, but right up the road was Jackie Onassis's home, so we get to ride by there. Real pretty. So we know how the other half lives. So after that, I went to a destroyer and made a deployment. Then I went overseas. I said, we're gonna have a little fun here. It's not good for the career, but it's gonna be fun. So I asked to go to Italy. So I went to Naples, Italy, and I was on AF South staff, which is part of NATO, the southern flank of NATO. So I was on there for a couple of years, and we did some traveling and did some work too. That was nice. It was nice, good life. And
when they say join the Navy and see the world, and you literally did.
Right, I did my share. So after that, I went to another ship, and then I went to a technical training command, and that's my last tour. And I decided to get out about 3 years before I actually did. I just heard people talk about retiring. I really never had thought much about it or the benefits or any of that. But I decided to for several reasons. I wanted to keep my daughter in high school, same place, and you get more desk jobs the more senior you get. And I knew I wasn't going to, I could tell I wasn't going to be an admiral, maybe not even a captain. So it was time to go. And we came to Fairhope, and eventually I got into teaching math over at UMS Wright Prep School in Mobile. And I did that for a couple of years. And then I switched to computers over there, which was really nice because I use it all the time, even with the Veterans Historic project. So did that for 23 years. Age 72, I retired. And it wasn't because I didn't like teaching or anything. It's because the drive over to Mobile, you know, I started to get lower back problems and started to get a little sleepy driving back. I said, well, I better regroup here.
Well, it sounds like you had two distinct and very fulfilling careers.
It couldn't have been better. I can't think of, and moving around helps because you don't get stagnant. So one thing about the Navy, you can keep track of where you are by what ship and what years. I mean, you start, once you're a civilian, right now I say, what was I doing 10 years ago? I wouldn't know. But
good point.
In the Navy, you say, well, I was 62, I was on such and such a ship, so I must have been there and all that. So that's it. I'm here, and I right now I tutor GED classes in math occasionally, and work with the project, play tennis. Life is pretty good.
Sounds very, very good, and it's certainly, speaking as an individual, a distinct pleasure and honor for me to conduct this interview. And I certainly applaud your service, and great story.
Okay, well, I appreciate you taking the time out to come over here.
Glad to do it. Glad to do it.
That's it. Thank you much. Thank you, James.